Yes, we are back with another round of the MCU March Madness. We are in the Sweet 16 after the growing pains of the first round, technically the first round and a half if we count the outliers. But we are now into the thick of it, as they say. We have 16 MCU movies. Only one can be the champion of them all. So let us go straight into it. Round one, Iron Man versus Spider-Man Homecoming.
That's a good one. I don't want to rehash everything we said, even though people might have missed the part one, but for people who didn't, they don't want to hear us and say the same things for another hour, so this probably will go a bit faster. I think it's got to go to Iron Man 1. I love the Tom Holland Spider-Man. I really liked what they did with Homecoming, with the villain, with the tying into the wider world, but you don't get there without Iron Man, and Iron Man 1 just as a standalone movie is... No movie is perfect, but it's coming as close as it can.
I was going to say, there's very few qualms I have about the first Iron Man. There's not even that many plot holes to it. And at the end of it, like, it's interesting because in a way they're both origin stories, but Marvel being smart gave us a different spin on the origin. It's the introduction of Peter to the wider MCU after being introduced in Civil War. We don't have to see Uncle Ben get shot again. He's already established, but yeah, I would definitely go Iron Man in that way, but it's not an easy choice.
No, these are all going to start getting a lot harder. The only reason why that was quick was because we talked about them both to death.
In the last round. And then Winter Soldier versus Shang-Chi.
Yeah, it's got to be Winter Soldier. Maybe we should have just made it'd be one really long video. I feel like we got to say some stuff, but
no, I was gonna say
Winter Soldier is just like Marvel at its peak, and Shang-Chi was pretty good, serviceable. Fell apart in the last act, where Winter Soldier's last act brings it all together.
Yes, Winter Soldier is Marvel perfection. However, as fast as that round was, the fact that we have Iron Man versus Winter Soldier for the next round, that one's going to be probably in depth.
Okay, we're going to have to dig a little deeper now, yeah.
All right, so next one we have Civil War versus Love and Thunder.
Even though I was defending Love and Thunder, and we even had to have a little bit of a bargain to get it through because we had a tie on that one. It's not Love and Thunder.
No, I was going to say, I think the best thing about Civil War is ultimately where Love and Thunder doesn't really add anything. There's no real ground. I've yet to see Thor again after Love and Thunder. He may show up in Doomsday with his kid or the kid that he got at the end of it. There were ramifications felt within the MCU from the end of Civil War.
I also don't think we need to see Thor again. I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I like the character. I'm not hoping we don't see him, but I feel like his story is ended.
I would want him to go out on a higher note than that. I was going to say, I know there's always like...
Yes, franchise-wise, movie-wise, yes, but if you think about his character moment, he kind of got to go back with the girl, and then he got the kid, and now he's moving to the next phase of his life where he's dad.
Right. Which is ironic because it is his actual kid.
But no,
yes,
but
I would go full send Civil War on this.
Oh yeah, I was not saying that Love and Thunder should beat Civil War anyway. I was just trying to add some commentary on Thor as a character.
First Avenger versus Ant-Man. This one's actually kind of hard.
That one's a bit of a toss-up because Ant-Man feels like a more modern movie, and not just because First Avenger was period set. They're both origin stories, but Ant-Man is not like the Mad Lib superhero origin story where it's like guy with a good heart plus tragic event equals superhero. Right. I'm going to give it to First Avenger. I love Captain America. I specifically love Chris Evans' Captain America. In the comics, I always liked the Ultimate, like the Ultimate Avengers version of Captain America.
Interesting.
And I feel like we got a lot of that in the MCU.
I feel like they balanced it well. I was going to say, like, the Ultimate Edition of version of Steve Rogers I never liked the Ultimate Universe in general. I thought that there was a lot of cool moments, but there were also a lot of missed moments with the characters if you go off of the original 616 comics, but that's...
It did kind of make some of them dirtbags.
Oh, yeah, like Hank Pym. There's a reason
that's exactly what I was thinking.
There's a reason they went with Scott Lang as for the franchise.
But I also like how they had Scott Lang, but they also had Hank Pym where being like, no, Ant-Man's always been around. We're just passing the torch without showing 3 movies of the backup.
Right. I would agree with that. And they got, there's good supporting cast all around. I think that Captain America is the strongest trilogy of standalone. I mean, Captain America 3 is 2.5 for Avengers, but I think that Chris Evans really carries that entire franchise out.
Yeah, but also for First Avenger being a period piece, I thought they nailed it without downplaying World War II, the historical significance,
Right.
the tragedies, the loss of life and everything. It was a fun superhero movie, but they never made it feel cheap in the World War II sense.
And they also didn't go to the point of, they knew they were making a comic book movie. Yes, there are Nazis because it is a World War II movie, but Hydra kind of took the place. But at the same time, it's not like the Nazis weren't out there.
Right. They really towed the line perfectly. I like the heart of Steve Rogers because seeing him as a man before as a superhero makes him relatable. Because you can't relate to a guy who's he's like a demigod at this point.
Right.
And Haley Atwell.
Yeah, Haley Atwell's going to get this through a lot. But now we're Deadpool and Wolverine versus Black Panther.
That's an actual tough one because they're so different.
Right. Whereas Deadpool and Wolverine not only is the third Deadpool movie, it's that meta commentary on the entire genre. Black Panther is just a strong story.
Well, one thing we were saying just at the end of the first part of this bracket, the first video we did with the Multiverse Spider-Man, if you take the nostalgia out of it, do you care about Deadpool Wolverine?
Probably not.
Still funny. Still an entertaining piece of popcorn movie, and I don't use popcorn movie as like a pejorative. But it would be like, yeah, saw it, okay, moving on.
Cool.
Where Black Panther, like you said, is a cultural moment.
Right. I would give that to Black Panther. I know that Deadpool and Wolverine.
I think it has to go to even just now when you announced the bracket, in my head it was Deadpool Wolverine. But because we made the argument, if you take the nostalgia out, is the movie still good? I don't think it's bad, but it's not the same thing.
Right. I might be a little bit weird on this because the nostalgic of it, like, I like Deadpool and Wolverine. It's a fine movie. They handled the Logan aspects about as well as I expected Ryan Reynolds to do it. I still think that in terms of, like, if I look at the overall story, I'm like, Wolverine's story to me ended with Logan. This is just a new Logan to follow.
It's just for fun, yeah. You don't take it too seriously. The other thing we forgot to mention about Black Panther, and it doesn't necessarily give it a leg up on Deadpool Wolverine in that case, having Kendrick Lamar do the soundtrack, genius move.
Oh, yeah.
So that one even surprised me.
A moment of just like a perfect storm. Ryan Coogler knew the vision he wanted, and he got the crew he wanted. He got everything compiled together, and I think that made for a good film.
Yeah, also amazing villains.
Yeah. I was going to say, Emma, like, if you rack up the villains, Killmonger for me is right behind Thanos.
Yeah, because he's the true believer, and you could be like, I might follow this guy.
Right. He reminded me a lot of like the Eric Lenscher, Charles Xavier debate. I was just like, yeah, Magneto's committing atrocities, but is he wrong?
Well, yeah, because that's what makes these villains. I like the true believer villain.
Yes.
Who, even if you disagree with him, you see it. Or the Dark Knight Joker, where there is no rhyme or reason to it.
I'm just doing it.
I don't like the sympathetic villain. It doesn't really land for me.
No, I'm getting sick of that trope, and I feel like especially this genre has started to lean heavily on it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the ultimate version is Darth Vader, where you see the Anakin story and you're like, okay, I do kind of feel bad for this guy.
Right. All right, so Guardians 1 versus Iron Man 3.
Based on the metric of you had a rough day at work, you come home, you're going to put one of the two on, which one is it? For me, it's Guardians.
Unless it's Christmas, yeah, I would agree with that. I was going to say both strong movies, but we said it in the last round. We'll probably say it again because it's moving on to the next round. Guardians is a movie that when it was announced, we thought shouldn't get made. We thought it was going to be the death of Marvel, and it's now the second strongest franchise that it has.
Yeah, it's great. It's great on rewatch. It's good to watch outside of a franchise. It's good for people who don't like superhero movies because it's just a silly sci-fi comedy.
Best soundtrack for the MCU.
To play devil's advocate, it does not do as much for the characters as Iron Man 3 does, but it's also not the best comparison because it's
That's
a 3.
That's Iron Man 3 plus that's like his 5th appearance, whereas
and it's one dude you have to give an arc to. And it does have an arc. Like even Star-Lord has a good arc of doing the right thing, and his found family is the strength that gets him through.
100%.
So the points in Iron Man 3's favor would be that it develops Tony Stark, not Iron Man as a hero.
Right. You get back to that moment of Tony in the cave having to use his mind as the ultimate weapon, and there's that great scene where he assaults the safe house.
I love that, where he just has like the one thing on his hand, and
he's got the one gauntlet. But I was thinking even before that, when he meets Trevor for the first time, and he's like gone to Home Depot, made like fertilizer bombs.
Right? Yeah. It's all ingenuity. It's all Tony Stark. I do love all that, but it's just which one are you going to rewatch? Which counts a lot for me, especially now with my movie time being so limited. I would have to give it up to Guardians.
100% agree. Iron Man 3 versus Infinity War.
Wait, I thought Iron Man 3 didn't pass.
I'm sorry, Iron Man 2.
Oh, okay. That's kind of a no-brainer.
Iron Man 2 versus Infinity War.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's Infinity War. I know you're not going to disagree.
No, it's Infinity War, but you're to give a compliment to Iron Man 2 as it exits the tournament. Without the foundation level there, we wouldn't get to where it is. So, I mean, you got to respect the foundation on which you're built, but at the same time, Infinity War shouldn't work. Infinity War will be a generation's version of Empire Strikes Back. You just got lucky that you only had to wait a year as opposed to 3 years between movies.
Right, yeah. It pulled a lot off. It brought a lot together. It's great. And Iron Man 2, I know we're talking about it being a foundational building block, and it is, but it's also a lesser individual movie because of that.
It's probably the weakest Phase 1 movie.
Yeah, maybe.
It's up there.
Was Thor 2 in Phase 1, or is that Phase 2?
That's Phase 2.
Okay, so yeah.
Or the first Thor would be in Phase 1. But I would watch the first Thor over Iron Man 2, depending on the day.
I wouldn't. If those two were in the bracket, I would be voting for Iron Man 2, but it's not going to take down Infinity War.
No, very few things are. And then the last one for the Sweet 16, Endgame versus the original Avengers. And that's weird because you're talking about the beginning and end of a franchise.
Yeah, because now if we go with our nostalgia argument, if you take the nostalgia out, if you don't get like a little tingle up your spine when you hear Sam Wilson's voice say "on your left" coming through the radio,
Alan Silvestri's Portals versus Alan Silvestri's original Avengers theme for the first time.
Yeah, if you don't get Captain America getting the hammer and you're like, holy crap, he could pick it up because he cleansed his soul. I don't think you can take the nostalgia out, but at the same time, it's a badass action movie.
I was going to say, like, it's a weird... Because without Avengers, there is no Endgame, and it is the culmination of these characters' arcs, and it was perfect because Infinity War ended in such a way that Infinity War was about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Endgame put the original 6 back under the microscope and made it about them because it was their send-off, and you get that really cool Star Trek moment where the original 6 Avengers, sign their names on the ending credits because it's their swan song, their bow.
Yeah.
Except for the 3 that still had movies in their contract for TV shows.
And to me, the way I think of it is that was the end of my MCU. Not even like saying because the movies after are bad. I mean, I don't like a lot of them. I don't like the directions going. But say they start making amazing movies again, and I love them, and I'm all in again. It will not top Endgame because you're not getting that first culmination experience ever again. Another generation could, but we're not.
Right. But at the same time, do you go back to the payoff for that, or do you go to the movie that led to that payoff? Because we had the payoff of them coming together the first time, which shouldn't have worked. And then we have the payoff of them metaphorically passing the baton on to a wider universe.
They did. So now we've made a few different arguments consistently now is the foundational blocks. Do we go on that angle? Do we go with the nostalgia angle? Or do we go with what are you going to watch after a stressful day at work and you can only watch one?
What is the better movie?
That's hard.
I would say Endgame.
I would have to say Endgame too, because I'm also focusing on Endgame. They all come together. It's the battle. It's gritty. Thanos is there. The whole big end of war. There's a whole movie before that. Where they go into everyone's past. They go into the first Avengers and they pay homage while respecting it and not retconning anything.
Without it being, obviously they retcon one thing because Loki got a TV show, but.
Well, they did those are time travel offshoots.
Right.
They didn't crap on their own franchise like they did with Captain Marvel.
They weren't course correcting. They were just setting up future things. But
I would have to give it to Endgame because it is the culmination. Yes, it has the nostalgia, but even if you take it out, it's a cool movie. You get a time travel heist movie. You get the action. You get the war and the payoff. You get memorable lines. The effects are outstanding. The score is outstanding. And it goes back and pays respect to all the foundational movies that we're arguing for anyway. So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
I would go with that. So yeah, I give it to Endgame. All right, so now we are in the Elite Eight. The Elite Eight. So round 3. Iron Man versus Winter Soldier.
Oh, that's not fair.
That really isn't. And
I wanted Iron Man to go at least to like the semifinals.
I was gonna say the way the bracket fell, man. It's comparing.
This is so fun. This was a great idea.
I was gonna say once you get through the first the big round where you have to all right, well we have Eternals and stuff like that.
But even that, we had some surprises. We had some good debates, and it kind of set our foundation for what our arguments are going to be.
This is the benchmark of origin stories versus what I think is the peak of what the MCU has been in its almost 20 years of being around.
I think nostalgia's out. There's not really a nostalgia argument for either of them.
No, I was going to say they're both, I hold both of them equally dearly.
Entertainment value, I think they're equal, but in different ways. Where Iron Man's a little bit lighter, you're seeing a building and everything, where Winter Soldier is much darker. It's kind of depressing. It's kind of sad, even though Steve Rogers always has that heart and hope. So if you do the what are you going to put on after work argument, I think I would still even lean to Winter Soldier because it's not so dark that you're like, I have to be in the right headspace for this.
Right. I was going to say, I'm literally thinking if I came home from work after a 12-hour shift and my wife and I are like, let's watch something, and then she flat out says we can't watch Daredevil.
If she pulls up 2 DVDs and it's these or 2 Blu-rays, we'll say, because DVDs is old now.
I don't.
Which one is it?
We could do an entire series on that, but God,
I don't want to say it out loud because I don't want to see Iron Man out of the tournament already. But it's Winter Soldier.
I was leaning towards Iron Man, but
oh, okay.
Because the other thing on that for me is they're both. It's not even a timing thing. It's it's almost 3 hours long. Iron Man is a perfect 2-hour movie. Winter Soldier is 2.5 hours, but you don't feel it. Neither of them drag.
Because if you want to say the time code thing, what would you cut out of Winter Soldier? I can't think of a single thing.
And you can't cut. There's nothing to cut out of Iron Man. It's 2 hours.
Yeah, Iron Man is. I said it already, but there's no such thing as a perfect movie. But Iron Man is one of those that it's about as close as you're going to get.
I will go Captain America 2 only on the capacity of the third act of Iron Man is, he fights Jeff Bridges in a bigger Iron Man suit. Whereas...
Well, that was a big problem with Phase 1, where the villain was just a messed up version of the hero.
The mirror image of your protagonist. Whereas Captain America 2, you have...
he has that to some degree with Bucky, but Bucky...
But that's only a small. That's the interpersonal battle that's going on amongst the three
character
helicarriers.
development.
Sam flying around fighting crossbones, Nick and Natasha infiltrating, trying to go after Alexander Pierce. But I think of the third act of the movie, and I just think of that moment where he's like, "I'm with you to the end of the line" as he's getting pummeled. I got to give it to Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it is. Marvel writing at its absolute peak.
If there were more of movies like this bracket, like I don't think anyone would ever complain about the MCU. And now I'm making you pick your favorite kids because now you got Civil War versus First Avenger.
Yeah, that one's tough. But after our long discussion we had about Civil War, Civil War is going to go very, very far in this, which we knew from the beginning, but it's going to go even farther than because when you initially pitched this, I kind of had a rough idea. At least I thought I did.
One more round because you're going to get to Winter Soldier versus Civil War next round.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're going to be stuck 45 minutes right there. So Civil War or First Avenger, I have to go with Civil War.
Yeah.
And it's because you still get the best of Steve Rogers. So you're not losing anything.
You're getting... The first Captain America movie was all about establishing Steve Rogers as this, paragon of justice.
Yes.
He's the guy that will jump on a live grenade. He is the guy that will fight someone 3 times his size, even though he's like 109 pounds.
Yeah, he'll fight and lose because it's the right thing to do.
Right. He will stand up for what's right. And that transfers over to Civil War, where you have him now defying the government that he was so eager to serve. And the foundation of that is laid so perfectly in a scene with Haley and Winter Soldier. He's like, I just want to serve. I want to do what's right. I don't know what right is anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, this is not the world I was raised. Because, I mean, we look back at World War II, and it's very clear what the right thing to do in those circumstances. I'm sure on the ground, the nitty gritty of it was not what we look back at like Band of Brothers. But that point in history, it was very clear what was going on. And that's the world he was raised in, where he knew this is good, this is bad. So to bring him now into this more confusing world of superheroes and people, like, he was the only superhero in his day.
Right. He was the superhero.
And he didn't even think of himself as that. He was just doing his duty.
Right. And I mean, like, I won't go full into it. And like, it's interesting when you look at that and the war side of things, like not to play this like, oh, that's a veteran card. But I was going to say, like, it's interesting having watched these movies. And I've always said the missed opportunity, and they did it well with Natasha being morally flexible in that gray zone. If they had put Steve and Clint together more, where you have this idealistic veteran who's like, Nazis bad, gonna fight, do that. And then you have Clint, who's basically just special operations for modern wars like GWAT. And he's like, there's a lot of gray that you're not realizing here.
Yeah.
Like, that was such a missed opportunity. But in terms of just the bracket, before I go into a pitch meeting, I will go.
Well, even with that track you were just going down, Civil War is giving you the MCU version of that. No, they're not going super dark and super heavy and like, what do we do here? This is horrible stuff going on. But it gives him that moment of pause where he does not know if he's on the right side of history.
Scene in Civil War where Steve's been arrested, Tony and Nat are there. It's when Bucky gets brainwashed and breaks out. But It's the original scene where like Tony almost has him. And he's like, this is just a draft of it. Like, you and I can sit down, we can make this work. And then he's like Wanda's interned at the compound. And that's when Steve's like, and I'm back.
Yeah.
But like, they're really, it's not as if, there's debate like which team was right. I'm like, Steve Rogers' team was right in the moral sense of things. Tony Stark was right in the sense of we've now seen the rest of the movies.
Yeah, they were both right in different ways, which is also makes it a very, very strong movie.
Yes, but that's going to be really hard next round.
Yeah, it really is.
So next bracket we have Black Panther versus Guardians 1.
I don't want to keep saying cultural moment because I feel like we're just saying that phrase too much, but as a pure piece of entertainment, it's Guardians 1.
In terms of lasting impact for the genre, it's Black Panther.
Yes. I think Black Panther meant more to people who like took it to heart. I think the Chris Pratt as Star-Lord is a very good fit. I'm blanking on Drax's name. I'm so bad with names lately.
Oh, Dave Bautista.
Dave Bautista is great as Drax. Really, the whole cast is very good.
There's
Vin Diesel is
a
non-event.
There's not miscast in any way, shape, or form.
But I don't think any are as perfect as Chadwick Boseman is to T'Challa.
or Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger.
Yes, you also get the better villains in Black Panther. Because
Right,
I think
I
the
was
villain
gonna-
for Guardians he's pretty forgettable.
It's Ronan, because everyone thought when I was talking about Ronan, when Hawkeye gets to be badass in Endgame, that I was talking about the
Yeah, Ronan the Conqueror, and he's kind of a non-event. Guardians, you watch it for the music and for the found family comedy aspect of it.
Right. Black Panther, I think, is the better made movie.
I think Black Panther is the better technical movie, where Guardians is probably the more entertaining popcorn movie.
I'm going Black Panther this round.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I don't think there's a wrong choice in any of these at this point.
No.
But I can't disagree with that decision, so. I was looking for an argument to make more against it. Again, nothing against Black Panther, mostly to keep it interesting, but I can't find one compelling enough that is worth going for.
Well, we're here.
Final four?
No, Infinity War versus Endgame.
Oh, geez, okay. Well, you have to take out the nostalgia's equal on both.
Right. It's hard for this because while they're not a part one, part two, like we said last round, they're two halves of a whole movie.
Yes. Yeah, they are and they're not.
Like,
you get more variety in Endgame.
You do? I think Infinity War is the better movie. And
you?
I do. Because Infinity War was
based on like pacing?
It's a 2.5 hour movie. It's paced very, very well. It's told from a different perspective, whereas, the Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Endgame is the Avengers story. Infinity War is Thanos' story. Thanos is the protagonist of Infinity War. It's his journey as he goes to get the Infinity Stones and complete his conquest. Okay. Brolin gives an amazing performance. It's backed up around the fact that this was the event. This was the universe is coming together. Everyone is there. It's got the payoff from Civil War. You got that, Steve comes in with the nomad beard and the tattered Civil War suit. Nat's now a blonde. Like, it's picking up the pieces of Civil War. It's The Empire Strikes Back.
It definitely is, yeah. With the very serious tones, the downer ending, all that kind of stuff, yes.
Endgame is Return of the Jedi. So you get that, you get the payoff, you get the culmination of the other 22 movies at that point. You get the payoff of...
You get the payoff of everything. You get the payoff of everything over a decade of movie making.
Right. And I was going to say, but at the same time, it's also its own thing because the conclusionary part of Infinity War is only the first 20 minutes. After Thor lops off his head and you get that 5-year gap, that's really the end of Infinity War and the beginning of Endgame, because now you're just like, well, we've been living in this for 5 years.
Yeah, which was a bold move for sure. And I remember being shocked when Thanos went down that easy. I'm like, well, what now?
Everybody gasped when Thanos got lopped off in the first 20 minutes. And then they're like, well, what's the movie then? And then it's like 5 years later, like opening night, people were literally like,
oh yeah, they made some bold moves. And it's a strong showing for sure. I could argue for and against all the variety you get in Endgame, because it almost makes it feel like separate movies. Like, if you think back in your head, the whole time heist is basically a movie, and then you're in the Endgame.
Right.
But if you took the time heist and made it its own movie and then made the other one, they would both feel incomplete.
This is one...
This is one we're going to get in a stalemate on, I feel like.
You're going Endgame?
I'm going Endgame because it has, aside from the downer ending, it has all of the things that I love about Infinity War. It has them all together. It has...
But they're not.
Bold moves. It has a culmination of this decade plus, 20 plus movies we've been watching and loving. It has all the characters that we're still into. It has all that stuff still. And then it focuses on a smaller cast for a while before rebuilding the whole thing in the course of one movie, and it never feels like it's a labor to get through. All
right, so I feel like Infinity War to me is still the more is the better made movie because it has to juggle more balls, and I feel like I'm just impressed by the fact that they're able to pull that off.
I can see that.
Your argument though for Endgame and the fact that this is the send off to RDJ as Tony Stark. It's the send off to Chris Evans. It's the send off to Scarlet.
It's the end of an era for sure. And the fact that like Scarlet's death, they kept it permanent. I did not see that coming.
Well, actually, it's funny because before we got on, she was doing press for something. I think she's getting ready to start press for that Jurassic Park movie that I don't care about. She's like, I'm tired of it. Like, Natasha's dead. Like, I don't want to come back. I don't want to come back as a variant because I think if I come back at all, it's going to undo my moment. And I had to fight for that moment because everybody else wanted Jeremy to die.
Yeah, the way they handled it was great, where the two friends didn't have to betray each other. She got to make the decision for herself, so it was a great character moment, because as we talked about, she kind of got shafted with her own movie.
Yep.
And like you said, it was a send-off to Iron Man, Robert Downey Jr., where he got to, instead of being the snarky kind of jerk who's dodging real emotions and real feelings, he sacrificed himself for the world.
Yeah.
And sending off Steve Rogers, where he goes back in time and gets to have the girl, which any time travel thing you could look into and kind of laugh at, because it also, like, she got married and had kids, and you just undid that.
Right.
But putting the silliness aside, like, you could kind of poke holes in anything like that.
And I feel like the Russos have even said, I'm like, well, actually, you never saw a picture of the husband, so it really could have been the way that it was always meant to play out.
Yeah, it could be the whole bootstrap cyclical time theory thing where it was his kids the whole time. Yeah, you could always make an argument in time travel. I didn't mean to go down that hole. We'll get the Looper thing where we sit here all day with making diagrams.
You converted me. I will give it to Endgame.
Okay. So I just think it's important too, because it closed the book that should not have been able to be finished being written.
Right. The fact that I was going to say, on one hand, yes, it's cool when you get this, but you get that portals, that third act, and then it's like, well, it's cool because you get the universe all coming together. I'm like, yes, but then at the end, I mean, yeah, it's a 30-minute battle, it's all CGI, but I mean, they were so methodic about payoff to thing, and the one thing that I always go back to, and I'm like the only person who cares about it, was Civil War. Clint meets T'Challa, is like, oh, I'm Clint, and he's like, I don't care, knocks him out, breaks his bow, and then in Endgame, he's running with the gauntlet, and he's like, Clint, give it to me, and I was the only person in the theater, I'm like, he remembered his fucking name!
Yeah, he does care.
He did care, I knew
it. Had so many little things like that, and even like when all of, like Gwyneth Paltrow in the armor, and all the female kind of sidekick characters had a moment, but it didn't feel so forced. Like
Natasha wasn't there.
Well, because she's more of a main character. This was like the B-level characters getting together. Like, they gave everyone a nice moment without detracting from anything or beating you over the head with messaging. It all just worked. Even Captain Marvel was cool in that, and her powers were consistent.
And they were smart about that to keep her selective on where she went. Otherwise, it would just be over super fast. All right, yeah. Endgame is the better choice.
And it's kind of like we were talking about with Civil War, where you think Civil War, the best part of the movie is the airport fight scene. In Endgame, you think that the fight scene in the wasteland, whatever they were at, is the culmination of the movie. No, it's the moments after that where Tony Stark and Steve Rogers have to come face to face. He was my friend, so was I. And then in Endgame, you get Steve Rogers passing the torch, Steve Rogers saying goodbye as an old man. You get Tony Stark having a funeral with all these people whose lives touch. Even the kid from Iron Man 3 comes back.
That he's created, including the kid from Iron Man 3. And then it's like the more interesting part for me for Endgame is the first hour when you're reassembling the team, because you're finding all these people in situations that could be their own movie. And I was talking to someone about the other day and how it's kind of like where they're at in a post-snap world is each a different stage of grief that could have been its own thing. So,
and that kind of makes Tony's sacrifice at the end even better, because he's like, I have a wife and a kid now. This is kind of the normal life, if I was not a superhero, I always wanted, because it's the life that I was kind of denied with my, detached parents, and he gives it up.
I think the other thing about it too is like the fact that the Russos had to change the marketing so much about. I remember so much about the marketing for Endgame and how much they had to hide. They didn't show Thor because they didn't want to show Fat Thor. They didn't show Hulk because they didn't want to show Smart Hulk. Like, it was such a culmination of things that didn't get spoiled, and yeah, and Endgame's the better choice. So now I
do see all of your points on Infinity War, and like we said, at this point in the bracket, it's only hard choices. There's no wrong answer.
Oh yeah, now we're in the final four, and there's really, Black Panther being the underdog. I did not think it would come this far.
I didn't either.
But we are in the first round of the final four, and we have Winter Soldier and Civil War.
Oh boy. I have said since it came out that Winter Soldier was my favorite MCU movie.
I said the same thing.
As time went on, as the characters developed, and now that we've been I haven't talked MCU this deep since Endgame came out.
Yeah, I'd probably be in the same boat.
I don't know what to pick. I do still think Winter Soldier is the best of the best writing for a movie out of all of these. But is it the best writing and representation of a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie?
I could make arguments for yes for both cases. I was going to say Winter Soldier is that initial coming together, blending. It took Steve Rogers and made him an interesting and multi-layered character. We already passed the Man Out of Time stuff. We don't care that he understands the modern world. He understands what a car is. He understands that women can vote. Like, he's not playing up those tropes, which the Russos did, and I think that was brilliant. But now you have...
I like that he had the little notebook, and he was like, oh, I missed that. I'll make a note of it. And that's right. Really all they touched. He wasn't confused at every turn.
And then, like, the Russos' attention to detail, each country had a different page in the notebook.
Oh, when I heard that, that's amazing.
That's the attention to detail that's not there. But at the same time, you're taking everything that was built on in 2 and expanding it in 3.
Yeah.
Everything that Steve Rogers questioned in 2, it's a weird situation where the Winter Soldier itself as a movie is Dark Knight. It still ends in a way that we know, S.H.I.E.L.D's fallen apart, but Natasha, Steve, and Sam are still together, and they're, 2 of them are Avengers, one's kind of a freelancer, and they're going out and doing their own thing. When we find them in Civil War, they are the Avengers now. Because that was the team at the end of Age of Ultron. They're now mentoring Wanda, and they're dealing with the ramifications of everything that's come up before them. And what Steve did for just S.H.I.E.L.D. the first time, is like, S.H.I.E.L.D's been hacked by Hydra. Hydra is bad. We have to stop this. He now tries to do that to the government. He's saying the government cannot regulate what we're doing. And the scene where he's just like, what if they send us someplace we don't want to go? What if there's someplace we think we need to go and they don't send us?
Yeah.
We
don't know what our missions are going to be. And if we just agree wholeheartedly, then we're just tools. We're not.
Right. I was going to say, you're dealing with now a situation where Steve stood up for what was right in Winter Soldier and the world backed him. Steve stood up for what he thought was right in Civil War and the world made him a fugitive. It's his personal Empire Strikes Back while being the first chapter of another trilogy. It's weird because I'm in the same boat as you. Winter Soldier is my number 1 pick.
As a standalone movie.
But in terms of overall, I think it's going to have to come down to the cable test. If you come home after a hard day's work and you got to watch something, are you watching Winter Soldier or Civil War?
It's probably Civil War.
I'm going Civil War.
Because it has all the popcorn entertainment plus the character growth, and kind of like the argument I made for Endgame over Infinity War, where all the things I love about Infinity War, there is a version of it in Endgame. All the things I love about Winter Soldier, there is a version of in Civil War. You get the Cap and Bucky thing. You get the Cap and Tony Stark.
I fully expected Winter Soldier to take the entire thing, but I'm going.
I thought Winter Soldier was going to win not just the finals here or the semifinals, but the bracket.
I thought he was going to win the MCU, and I am beyond shocked by that. And then on the back half of that, we got Endgame versus Black Panther.
We've said a lot of great things about both of these. It's nothing against Black Panther, but just for all of the reasons and the sheer scope, it's got to go to Endgame.
I was gonna say, like,
I did not think Black Panther was going to make it. I didn't think any movie where it was one character was going to make it this far.
I did 3 mock versions of this with a couple of my buddies, and every time I had Volume 2 going over Black Panther, and then our discussion made me realize that Black Panther deserved. So, like, Black Panther was a full-on underdog here.
Yeah, I did not see that coming. I mean, again, nothing against it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fantastic.
You're just
I didn't think there'd be a Black Panther or like Captain America, just him. Like Civil War is different. It's Captain America Civil War, but it's different because it's all of them. I thought it was going to come down to only those.
So we are now in the final. We are in the literal Endgame. Civil War versus Endgame.
I had a feeling it was going to come to this after Civil War beat out so many things I didn't think it was going to. Right. I'm going to have a really, really hard time here.
So, floor is yours.
Well, all the things I was just saying about Endgame with the scope and the scale and bringing everyone together in that, and it's huge, is awesome. But the culmination of just cutting all the fat, cutting all the side characters, cutting out anything excess, here are the core MCU characters that people turned up for 12 years, and that's it. I like Wong, I like Valkyrie, I like all these side characters. We don't necessarily need them. We want Iron Man, Captain America. We are missing Thor, we are missing Hulk.
Right.
But we have everybody else, even Ant-Man, even
Spider-Man.
Yeah. The introduction of my favorite cinematic Spider-Man, I mean, probably most people's at this point. It's going to be really, really hard because I don't want to discount Endgame at all. And if you asked me, we're just like going out to grab a coffee or something, and you're like, hey, which one did you like better, Endgame or Civil War? I'd be like, well, I like them both, but Endgame was it's Endgame.
Right.
But I don't know right now.
It's a situation right now where, and we've talked about it in previous rounds, how the Russos basically made a self-contained trilogy of Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. So you're talking basically about the first chapter of a trilogy and the last chapter of a trilogy, all of which comes together. Things that are set about and established in Civil War are paid off in Endgame. Things that Endgame kind of needs to, in a certain way, are all foundationally laid in Civil War.
Yeah, so the foundation argument gives points to Civil War, but at the same time, it would have given points to Infinity War over Endgame. The entertainment popcorn aspect, I think, is a tie.
It's tied. If you asked me to do the cable test, you at home from the heart, there's no wrong answer.
You're probably, if it's a cable test, you're probably flipping back and forth.
Right. At that point, I'd be like, okay, so at that point, you're like, oh, God, this is hard, because if you pass the cable test, I'm like, oh, you're flipping back and forth. Okay, so at that point, I grab my steelbook for Civil War, I grab my steelbook for Endgame, we're watching one, what are we watching?
Right, and you're going to watch the other one like the next day.
Right.
So that argument's going to be hard to come up with a definitive answer. As far as character growth payoff moments, I think you get the payoff in Endgame because it is the end.
Right.
Tony Stark sacrifices himself, but it doesn't mean he doesn't have great growth in Civil War.
Not only that, you're getting the emotional payoff to Civil War. Civil War ends them fractured, not talking. Steve, Nat, and Sam are on the run. They're fugitives. They have to break their guys out of the raft.
Yeah.
They don't see each other for in-universe like 3 years. They don't speak. And then the first time they speak, everyone was just like, oh, it's going to be an emotional reaction. No, they blow up on each other.
Right.
And then they have another 5-year gap where they don't speak to each other. And then by the time you're finally, Scott's, tested out time travel, he turned into a baby and everybody's laughing. And then Steve steps outside so he can just have a moment to himself. And then Tony shows up and they finally see each other and have that moment of I think of the moment where Tony gives him back the shield, a shield he has not had in universe for almost a decade at that point.
Right, and in that moment that Tony kept it and brought it for a reason.
Right. I was gonna say, at the end of Civil War, Steve gives up. He's like, you don't deserve that shield. My father made that shield, and you got my father killed. And he's like, whatever, man. Like, you're right. Yeah. Maybe I don't deserve it. And then it's that reluctant is like, do I deserve it? And he's like, he made it for you. It's something that,
It's such a great way to forgive an old friend without being like, I didn't mean what I said. Like, it was such a good way to do it.
There's the moments of, there's those moments of you don't get the, oh, I shouldn't have said what I said. Like, the damage is done. Like, there was no clean mend. They just made peace, realizing that there were bigger fish to fry.
Well, and also it's not like Steve killed Tony's parents. He just knew what happened and didn't tell him because he was friends with the person who did it.
Right.
But then you bring in the brainwashing thing. Like, it's such a good moral argument because you could argue back and forth all day long and there is no right or wrong. Well, I guess technically there would be a wrong because Captain America couldn't lift Thor's hammer until he came clean on that.
Right. I think that there's definitely... But again, like, you don't get those payoffs without it being set up in Civil War. And I don't know if I'm leaning towards Civil War, but I don't know if that's the right way to do it. Like, do I like Civil War because it has the balls to have that kind of bleak ending?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I'm almost leaning that way too. Don't lock it in. Am I leaning that way because it has the bleak ending that feels more ballsy, where Endgame, it had some sadness to it, but it was...
Endgame has some shocking moments. I mean, you decapitate Thanos, who you thought was still your villain, but at the same time, it's not the Thanos that we just spent the last movie with in the first 20 minutes, and you have the ramifications and fallout of that. But at the same time, you have your Natasha sacrificing herself moment. You have Steve with the hammer. You have I Am Iron Man, and the culmination and payoff of all of these movies, and what everything was built upon.
Yeah, it's hard to pick that, but now I'm trying to argue in my head: am I not picking Endgame just because it seems like the expected thing? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's not necessarily wrong.
I'm curious. I'm going to go to my letterbox and see what I have ranked higher.
I'm really on the fence, and I didn't think... I mean, I love Civil War, but I didn't think it was going to be this level contender in this entire competition. I'm trying to think of what character moments paid off better, and that's really hard to say. Because, I mean, the I Am Iron Man, he snaps his finger, it still gives me chills when I rewatch it.
Oh, God damn it.
The Cap getting the hammer, the I'm on your left through the portal, all of that stuff. I still remember the feeling I had the first time I saw it.
I have Civil War and Endgame as 3 and 4. So they're right next to each other right then.
3 and 4, not 1 and 2?
Winter Soldier and Infinity War are 1 and 2. But
wow.
But I also haven't updated those rankings in a long, long time.
Well, this thing, because I was worried we went into this and we'd just be like, this one or this one, and we both agree. This one or this one, and we both agree. And we obviously had to come to agreements at points. We did have to negotiate on a couple brackets. But now that we're in the end, we can't even make up our own minds. We're not like split on a movie trying to convince the other person.
No, it's literally like there's no wrong answer here. But because I'm not cheap and I'm not going to make our listeners listen to an hour of a secondary video and they're going to be like, they didn't even pick one.
No. We're picking one. We're picking one in the next 11 minutes is what we're doing.
I would...
All right, well, let's break it down in the things that we've been arguing. The nostalgia thing, I think we have to give it to Endgame.
Yep.
If you take the nostalgia out, it's Civil War. For the popcorn entertainment, we already said it's a tie. As far as having our favorite characters in it, I do like Thor. I like Chris Hemsworth Thor a lot. I actually thought Mark Ruffalo was a good Hulk, and I liked when they made him Smart Hulk, but I don't watch Civil War and miss them. Right,
and whereas on my thing, I mean, like, Renner's obviously a bigger part of Endgame, but at the same time, I can make the argument as a fan that the Russos introduced Clint in Civil War, or their iteration of Clint in Civil War, and that is the best version of Hawkeye we got until we got the TV show.
I can see that, and he is your favorite character, so I can see that weighing heavily for you.
Whereas in Endgame, I flipped my collective shit when the first trailer dropped and I realized we were getting Ronin, because he really is Ronin up until Natasha sacrifices herself, and then he comes back, ditches the sword, and then gets back the bow.
Yeah.
So which
was really cool.
Which there's actually a really cool fan theory that breaks my heart, and the fact that on Vormir, when they're fighting and she starts sprinting and he shoots the explosive arrow at her, and then people say, I'm like, the in-universe theory is that's the first arrow he's fired since he was shooting with his daughter.
Oh, it could be.
I was going to be like, other than that, he's been using the Shuriken, he's been doing the Ronin thing. And I'd be like, that is so powerful for character development. That
yeah, because it shows how badly he did not want to lose his friend.
Right. That's all he had left. Like, Laura and the kids were already dusted.
Well, it seems like you're making arguments to Endgame now.
I was gonna, in terms of Hawkeye representation, I gotta go clearly Endgame. I mean, Civil War.
Because Cap was my favorite character, and I love the ending they gave him. I love him wielding Mjolnir, but I also love him standing up for Bucky, and he never meant to hurt Tony Stark. It's just what happened in Civil War. It seems very predictable, but I'm leaning to Endgame now.
I'm leaning to Endgame, but it's not an easy decision. And the other thing for Endgame is, as much as I love Civil War, as much as Civil War is a great movie, and it can be a great self-contained movie, as well as the first part of an overarching story, let alone the 13th movie in the MCU, ultimately, Endgame is going to be remembered longer because it was the payoff. Like,
yeah, that was one point you just put hugely in Civil War's favor, and it's something we talked about a lot. If I had never seen a Marvel movie and someone showed me Endgame,
you'd be completely lost.
It's CG, it's popcorn, I had fun with it, great. The big moments mean nothing. If you showed me Civil War, I think it would mean a little bit more, but you still need some backstory.
Right. Civil War was when Kevin Feige was just like, if you're not on the train at this point, it's not my job to catch you up.
Yeah, because as you were explaining it, I was like, well, that's huge points to Civil War, but I'm like, no, they kind of are equal there, because if you take everything out and that's your only reference of a Marvel movie, you would probably want Endgame, because if you're going for pure spectacle, there's just more spectacle.
Right.
And it actually kind of gives you the stakes, because they have to go through time and rebuild everything. So if you only ever saw that one, it gives you glimpses of what you missed, and it tells you the stakes, where Civil War is just like, okay, they're making some agreement because something bad happened.
Hold on one second. You're going to have to edit this out. What? Thank you. Cat.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm right here. You're fine. You're fine. You're not alone. All right. Getting back into it. I really am thinking more now that I got to lean towards Endgame, just because do I think I'll flat out say I think that Civil War is a stronger movie because it doesn't have as much heavy lifting to do. But the fact that Endgame is able to pull off the heavy lifting that it does and give each character a mostly worthy send-off, and for the most part stick to these deaths. I would say my biggest problem with Infinity War now in a post-Endgame world is that actually now every death has been retconned in some way, shape, or form. Anyone that was dusted is back because they were able to redo the snap. Gamora is back, just it's the variant.
Yeah, but as far as that goes, because I thought I was going to have a problem with that, but the way they pulled it off, I feel like they kind of earned it.
With the exception of like Vision but I mean, we haven't had that show yet, so they may be able to stick the landing on that. It's just one of those things where it's just like the deaths in Endgame seem concrete. Like people are already talking like, oh, Downey's coming back, but he's now Doctor Doom.
Well, that I don't like. I don't like that at all. If they pull it off, great. They don't have the best track record right now, so I don't think they're going to. I feel like it cheapens everything that we're like gushing about right now.
So the thing about it for me is it better to remember it when it went out on its high point, and that's not going to get any higher than Doomsday and Secret Wars. I don't care what you do. You're not going to make as much money as Endgame. It's just not. Well, no,
and I would even take all that because at the time, Robert Downey Jr. was done. At least I believed it.
And he's, his argument is like, I am done as Tony, and I wouldn't come back if I didn't think that I had something worthy to bring to Victor. And he keeps swearing up and down that he is Victor, not a Tony variant.
And there is a world where they course correct, because if they announced this a month after Endgame, I'd be like, well, it kind of cheapens his death, but like, I have faith they're going to pull it off.
Right.
So it's hard to bring in like current knowledge to it, but I guess we have to bring in everything since we can't decide.
I'm going Endgame.
I think it has to be Endgame, and I know people watching might be disappointed because it seems like the predictable answer, but just the fact that I've used this term a lot in these last two videos, it was a magic trick that it happened and that it worked. And it's not like, oh, they kind of got away with it. They killed it. They nailed it.
The fact that...
So even if Marvel course corrects, even if they make another 20 movies that are great, and it's just... You could even argue technically, acting-wise, everything, it's just as good. Now it's the second time. It's not as impressive.
Right. No, you'll never have... And originally for me, the bigger one for me, like I keep going back to, is Infinity War. You'll never have another Portals moment. You'll never have a moment of just pure... holy crap. And I'm sure in Secret Wars, they have something planned with the multiverse. And you'll have like Toby and Hugh and all them pop up. And now everyone that's ever worn a pair of spandex with the word Marvel on it will show up at the same time. It's not the same. It's never going to give you the same level of awe and wow.
Yeah, even if they nail it, there might be younger audiences that they're seeing that first and they connect with that more. Great for them.
Like, this is great for you. I was here when they did it the first time.
Yeah, it's kind of like how, like on my Star Wars channel, when I talk about Star Wars, even people who like the prequels, if you saw the originals first, you like those better. If you saw the prequels first, that's your Star Wars.
Yeah, no,
So for us, this is our MCU. So the fact that they got, what was it, 24 movies by the time Endgame?
23?
Even 20, even 15. Right. The fact that you made a serialized big budget movie epic and you held people's attention for like 11 years.
The fact that you had a decade-long plan of interconnected movies. It's not like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings where they filmed it all at once, or we grew up with them because every movie was a different year at school. These movies all, for the most part, seamlessly interconnected. There are maybe little nitpicks here and there, not nearly as bad as there are now.
Yeah.
But like you were in an era, specifically that sweet spot of like 2016 to 2018, 2019, where everything was just lined up. Things that...
It also brought in so many people who have never picked up a comic book. Love them. And it also... Yes, there's source material, but it's not like this was written exactly as it went down and they just adapted it really well.
Yeah. No, I think that we made the right call here.
I think so. And if people disagree, I would really, other than like you guys are idiots, like if you have like a real concrete thing to say, let us know, because I will be open-minded about it and I'm really curious.
Oh, no, 100%. I say it in all my videos. Put it in the comments. As long as it's relatively like positive or productive, I will always respond to comments.
Yeah. Tell me I'm flat out wrong. Just tell me why.
But all right, man, that was
fun. That was a really great idea. The only thing that makes me sad is it's kind of a one and done. We can't really do it again.
No, we'll have to find another franchise. And the only downside of that is, the only other movie franchise that has this many entries is James Bond, and you hate like 18 of them.
I only like the Craig ones. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen them all, but I've seen enough sampling from each Bond that I only really care about the Daniel Craig ones. So
that's fair. And again, I'll probably have you on when I start talking about whatever Amazon's going to do, but this was absolutely fun. I'm so glad we were finally.
Yeah, this was a great idea. And I also did not think we would sit because we recorded both of these videos for people who watched both back to back.
And
I
they're
did not
both
think I'd be
literally
sitting in
an
this
hour
wooden chair.
perfectly. The fact that we literally did our first round, which was 34 movies, 32 movies, and that took an hour. And then every other round also took perfectly an hour.
Yeah, the first one was like an hour 15. But we also saved a lot of time because we said so many things about the movies. It was easier to kind of wrap it up in the second one.
Right.
But yeah, that was a fantastic idea. That was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it. So we're going to release. Well, I don't have to talk about the release because it's the end of the second part. So everyone, thanks for watching. I will try to trim some of the fat, but I don't want to trim us thinking because that's the whole point of this. But thanks for watching and thanks for hanging in there for all 2+ hours if you did. Brian, thanks for the idea. This was amazing.
Not a problem, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you.